Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my full coverage foundation routine. Now, I typically don't wear a full coverage. I like to build my coverage starting with a light coverage foundation and then using concealer to spot correct or add any additional coverage where needed. But there are those days when I want to look absolutely flawless. I don't want any of my sunspots or freckles to show. I just want to look airbrushed. So if you guys are interested and want to see how I get this full coverage look, keep on watching. Okay, let me start by telling you guys a little bit about my skin type. I would say I have combination skin now, whereas before I thought I was more towards the dry side. Ever since I switched over to my current skincare routine, which I will link in this video, it's still exactly the same. I'm still using primarily Drunk Elephant products. I feel like my skin has really balanced out, except I did recently run out of my Lala moisturizer by Drunk Elephant, and suddenly my skin is feeling drier, so that's how I know that moisturizer really works for me. So I'm again a little dry right here, oily T-zone, so I'm pretty normal, not too extreme on either end. But because of that, I like to prime the different areas of my skin using different products in order to make my makeup last longer. So for the T-zone, I like to use a oil controlling primer. I love Urban Decay's De-Slick Complexion Primer, and I think this one has been getting some bad reviews because if you use it incorrectly or try to apply foundation, rub it in, it does clump up, and that is because it is a very mattifying primer. So anything you apply on top of it tends to stick right to it and then not move. But I do find that you have to really press products on top of it. You have to press this into the skin because if you rub or try and use a brush, it'll clump up and certain areas will just kind of stick together. So I'm gonna take a little bit of this, literally the tiniest amount because it's only going on the T-zone, and I'm just gonna pat it in right here. You can do a little sliding motion, but you'll feel it start to dry down and then it doesn't move. And then on the rest of my skin, I'm gonna be using the Marc Jacobs Coconut Primer, which is really hydrating. And I'm also gonna mix in the Marc Jacobs Do You Coconut Drops, Coconut Gel, for an all-over glow. So I'm gonna mix these two together and apply that everywhere else. Primarily down here, not so much on the forehead since I applied the De-Slick. So I just mix them together in my hands and then I'm gonna apply it. And when it comes to building a full coverage, I love stick foundations. I just find that they're easy to build coverage in certain areas, whereas a liquid isn't as concentrated. So I have a few stick foundations here. I have the Hourglass Vanish foundation. This is great if you're more towards the normal and oily side because I feel like this one's a little more matte. I have the Makeup Forever Ultra HD, which is the one I'm gonna be using because I find this one to be a little more hydrating, which is gonna be more forgiving on my dry areas. I also have the LANCOME ULTRAWEAR Stick Foundation. This one is a soft matte finish. And then for more of a liquid foundation that I like for a full coverage, this one I discovered during my drugstore week. This is Infallible Pro Glow and Infallible Pro Matte. Both of these mixed together create a really nice full coverage satin finish because one's super glowy, one is really matte. Together, they are bomb. But like I mentioned, for today, I'm gonna be using the Makeup Forever Ultra HD because I am more towards the dry side at the moment, and I'm gonna use shade 325. And instead of swiping it across my entire face, I'm gonna use my sponge to pick it up straight from the stick and then pat it on. So I'm just picking it up like this. I'm just gonna start patting it in. I feel like this gives me a little more control as well. It allows me to apply a little more foundation where I need it, such as these blemishes up here. And again, it's more on the hydrating side. You definitely have to set this foundation because it's so dewy, but amazing, amazing coverage. So I'm just going in with a little more foundation and covering my sunspots and blemishes. That way I also don't have to use a separate concealer. It's like an easy one step. So from here, I'm just gonna brighten up the eye area, and I love the NARS Radiant Creamy Concealers. I feel like they have never failed me. They always look good. It's really tricky to apply even more concealer over a full coverage. I feel like sometimes it can get kind of cakey because full coverage foundations are on the thicker side, but this one, I've never had a problem with this concealer. So I'm gonna start with Honey. I'm gonna apply it to the inner corner right here to brighten. This one is more of a pink salmon tone. And then to highlight, I'm using Custard. So I'm just gonna swipe that one right here, which is it's not too much lighter. Just gonna add a little more coverage. I could definitely go lighter, but I don't wanna get up to grab another concealer. And then again, I'm gonna blend it out with that same sponge. And normally for the eyes, I would apply an eyeshadow base first and then apply my foundation over it if I was going to use my foundation or concealer as an eyeshadow base, just to further prevent it from creasing. But this time around I forgot because I'm mainly demoing the skin, so oops. Lately, I've been using my Cover FX Perfect Setting Powder more so than my Laura Mercier setting powder, and that's because the Cover FX one is talc-free, so it's more gentle and forgiving on the skin because it doesn't contain that talc. But again, when it comes to a full coverage foundation, they're more towards the thicker side, really creamy, so I feel like they need more of an intense setting powder. So that is when I will use the Laura Mercier powder because it does contain that talc, which will really set everything in place. And I like to really press it in with the sponge because I feel like it really sets everything versus a brush which can move around the product. So I'm going to pick it up with a damp sponge. This one's from Ofra, but it's just like a beauty blender. I almost like the texture of this one a little better. And I'm just going to press it into the skin. I'm going to grab a clean one just to pick up the excess creasing first. Same thing with the area around the nose. I want to really press that in, and then I drag whatever excess powder is on the sponge everywhere else. And just keep pressing it in until the powder fully disappears. You're going to look really dry and matte for a moment, but that's where a setting spray comes in hand. Alright, and here you have the full-on cake. This is full coverage, but I want to share one more tip with you guys because this is something that tends to happen to me often. Once you've applied your base, when you go to apply your bronzer, blush, and highlight, sometimes for whatever reason, you tend to knock off the coverage, and then whatever blemish you worked really hard to cover, or sunspots in my case, they tend to pop back up. And that's really frustrating because you spent all this time trying to cover it with foundation, and it's really hard to go back in with more foundation or creamy product because you set with powder. So if you do that, it gets cakey, blah, 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 blah. So if that happens to you guys and you're applying your bronzer, your blush, or highlight, and suddenly the blemish reappears, use a foundation powder to cover it back up. This is where foundation powders come in hand. Even if you don't like foundation powders, I highly recommend adding one to your arsenal of makeup, whatever kit it is that you have at home. I really love the Bare Minerals Bare Pro foundation. I find that it isn't too drying and it doesn't make my dry skin, it doesn't accentuate my dry skin. It's very seamless, it's not detectable. I really have grown to like this one. So whenever that does happen, obviously right now I haven't added bronzer or blush or anything like that, or everything's pretty covered still. I mean, I look like I've been face-tuned. But what I would do is just grab a kabuki brush. I find that a kabuki brush just deposits the most amount of product and really keeps it concentrated to the area that you're trying to cover. So I would pick up the powder with the kabuki brush and then just press it into any area that needs a little more coverage. This is also great for touching up throughout the day, which always remember, if you're going to touch up with a powder later in the day, always blot first to pick up the excess oil, then set with powder, and then always use a setting spray to melt that new fresh powder that you just applied into your existing makeup. So that is it for me. I'm going to go ahead and add a little more color and eye makeup. I'm going to show you guys what I used though so that you're not left hanging, and then I will be back to conclude this video. Alright, that completes my full coverage foundation routine, including this makeup look. I am beyond obsessed with this Bite Beauty lipstick. It is in the shade Radish, and it's also their lip pencil in shade number 96. This is pretty much the only shade of like magenta or pinky you'll ever see me wear. I don't wear pink lipstick. It's a perfect look for summer. Maybe like a wedding summer look, because I don't think I would wear this much foundation out in the hot sun. Right now it's 90 degrees outside and I'm kind of melting. But that De-Slick primer, honestly, I very rarely have to touch up my makeup when I wear this in my T-zone. I don't find that I get oily, and my makeup really stays glued on to that T-zone area. So I really love this stuff. Definitely try it out, get a sample. Let me know what you guys think. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Comment down below on any other personal tips and tricks you might have for wearing a full coverage foundation, especially if you're more towards the oily side. I'm always curious because, again, I'm more of a normal combo to dry side. I'm not super oily. So I always enjoy reading tips and tricks from those of you with more of an oily skin type. Plus, it really helps everyone else watching my channel. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Like, share, and subscribe. Liking is the same as giving it a thumbs up. I don't know why I keep saying that. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.